Hello and welcome to all of you to another episode of Wrong Ones with Weston. Today in the roster of discussing previews for the Indian T20 League are team Bangalore and team Punjab. If you haven't checked out, already have done one episode on Hyderabad and Rajasthan. So any Hyderabad and Rajasthan fans out there, you guys can go and check that out. But before you check that out, you might as well watch this show, ask your questions, and see what might be in store in the previous episodes that we did and the episodes that are yet to come. Welcome once again to Somesh and Dan. Uh, One of them is our in-house Matthew Hayden, as we received in the comments yesterday. It is up for you to guess who that person is. But anyway, heading straight into the discussion. First thoughts on Punjab, Dan. This is a team that you've worked with. Do you think they are stronger than what they were last season on paper?
I think that there's definitely some scope to say yes and to say no, really. I mean, there's things that I like, there's things that I don't like. So ultimately, the thing for me, the real positive is the acquisition of Sam Curran, who I really felt was someone that the franchise should go for in 2023, given that obviously he was unavailable in the mega auction in 2022. So he just balances up the side. Yesterday we spoke about Jason Holder doing the same thing at Rajasthan, and this is a very similar example. But I think even more so is Sam Curran, who can bat anywhere really in the top 3 to 7 and bowl multiple phases, left-hander, left arm, pacer. Just so useful in terms of ticking all those boxes for valuable skill sets, really. So I think that also that enables Punjab to go with perhaps a little bit more batting depth as well. I mean, maybe not so much last year that there was a problem, although I still think there was a slight issue. Rabada was maybe one spot too high. Same with Rahul Chahar. But I mean, in the past, you're looking at there were situations where in the last few years they were playing players like Majib or Chris Jordan at number 7 or something like that, and that's very, very long tail. So Sam Curran will really, really help in that respect, and I'm excited to see what he's going to bring to the franchise. The negatives primarily is a focus on 2 areas for me. One is obviously the injury to Johnny Bairstow, who I feel is an integral part of this team, particularly with his ability to play spin. We've noted this with several articles and discussions on maybe last season Punjab were one of the weaker teams against opposition spinners, which I think was not necessarily a consequence of design. I think that there was certainly a feeling that Mayank Agarwal, Johnny Bairstow, Liam Livingstone will actually be pretty decent against opposition spin, but it just didn't really pan out that way. But Bairstow now being absent as well is a real blow, a real problem for them that they're going to need to address, and they're going to need to address it in the right way, because we're 4 out of 10 qualifying, 2 or 3 defeats early, and you're really playing catch up. And the other thing is Mayank Agarwal. I mean, look, he's been a mainstay for the team for a number of years, and yes, his returns last season were not as good as they would normally be with the bat. And maybe that was due to captaincy, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But the bizarre thing I found was that they could have had Mayank back because they didn't exhaust anywhere near their full budget at auction. So there was no reason to. I feel like they shot themselves in the foot a little bit by not going to spend their full budget, basically. And if they could have got Mayank back as well, the team would be, a Mayank Agarwal and Sam Curran in the same team, which we wouldn't have had either year, would be really nice, I think. So they're going to have to structure up a little bit differently to last season, I think.
Fair enough. Somesh, what are your first thoughts on Punjab? Where do you stand on them?
The 2 teams that we are going to discuss today are Punjab and Bangalore. And I was just actually wondering that there are so many similarities between the 2 teams. I mean, obviously we'll talk about Bangalore when we come to that. But first and foremost, the point that Dan sort of mentioned as a passing thing about where are the runs coming from when they're facing spinners is my primary question. I mean, if you look at Punjab last year, they were probably the best side against pacers. They started off really well, always were up front in the power play. Probably lost a lot of wickets than they would have liked, and it sort of showed in the death numbers. But runs against spin was their issue. I'm not sure if they have done enough this season to counter that. And now with Bairstow's injury, they are again in a very precarious position on how to go about filling that hole. Secondly, when it comes to their bowling, pacers were good. Arshdeep has been a find for one of the finds of the IPL, let alone finds from the Punjab team. They've showed up their bowling attack with Sam Curran, who has been pretty good at the death lately. Plus, they have Rabada and Ellis to choose from. But then again, even in the bowling department, the spin attack is not very threatening. Specifically in the latest latest tournament, how it is set up in the home and away front, and especially when the game moves in the second half and pitches will slow down, I see this team struggling both while facing spin and bowling spin.
Do you guys think, like, I am completely on board with what you mentioned, Somesh, about their runs being, like, them being very weak against spin. I was just looking at a few numbers. They average around 18 at a strike rate of 108, and against left arm spin it was even more poor. So
Yeah.
that is
That was
obviously
also
there.
due to a lot of righties in the middle.
Yes. But do you think now, with Bairstow being ruled out, this clears the way for someone like Bhanuka coming into the 11 instead of Matt Short? And does it help them address that issue versus spin? One. The other is, you do you think their spin bowling was poor because it was also a function of the pitches on which the tournament was played on last year? Because we had one of the best batting pitches last year, I felt, in Maharashtra. But this time, with teams traveling and the pitches becoming slower, maybe the likes of Brar and Rahul Chahar can do a better job with the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I just chip in for a moment and then we can have Dan give his explanation. Rahul Chahar was still decent. What I felt happened was he did not find a lot of support from the other end, from Livingston and Brar. So maybe that is something that they'll have to look into. On the point of Rajapaksa, on paper, yes, it helps that they will have a left-hander with high intent in the middle order. But again, Rajapaksa's recent form has been on a curve which he wouldn't like. He was on the high post last season going into the Asia Cup, but since then his stock has fallen. So I'm not sure if how much of a impact his availability going to make.
From my perspective, I think that there's a few ways that they can structure up with the batting group following the injury to Bairstow. So I think the obvious choice would be, in terms of trying to go a bit more like for like, someone who's been with the franchise in previous years, would be to go with Rajapaksa and start him off as almost like a seniority decision, if that makes sense, kind of a faith decision, showing faith in a player who's done well for them in the past. I think also you could level that would be a lazy selection as well at the same time. And there are a few ways that I think they could structure up a little bit differently. So they could look to push everyone else up one, and then bring in a Sikandar Raza at, let's say, number 7, which would then produce an extra spin option that they can utilise, particularly against left-hander heavy teams, which would be quite nice. There's also the other option of bringing in, obviously, Matt Short, who's just come in. But I think there's a lot to ask of someone to come in from the BBL, where there's not a lot of high-quality spinners, and the pitch is generally not massively conducive to spin, to come in and hit the ground running in markedly different conditions, and ultimately in what is, to be honest, a higher standard of competition as well. So I think that's a lot to ask of Matt Short. The other option, which I find really interesting, and we can certainly go on to discuss this and how maybe you can structure up this with an impact player as well, is the addition of maybe a Kaverappa as a left-hander who can bat in the top order for Bairstow, and then you can structure up differently, because then you can get a Raza in to improve your batting depth as well, or you can go Nathan Ellis and you just have 20 overs locked with Curran, Rabada, Shikhar, Ellis, and Arshdeep, and you have a really strong bowling heavy team. Yes, the tail's a little bit long, Rabada 8, Shikhar 9, Ellis 10, or something like that, but they're all kind of like number 9s. If does that make sense? Like they're kind of like 3 number 9s batting at 8, 9, and 10. So that could work too, but I mean, bowling strong teams tend to do pretty well in tournaments. So it's maybe a little spin light still if you did that. But that's where you want a player like Livy to step up and bowl 2-3 overs in every game as well. So you bowl 7 overs and spin in the game. There's a few options there, and I think we're quite interested to discuss all those.
Now, another question that comes up is that there's an obvious slot of one Indian batter somewhere in that 11. Now, who would that Indian batter be? Would it be someone like Prabsimran Singh, who's been with the franchise, I think, now for 4 years and has been able to get 1 or 2 games every season but not been able to do much? Or do they go for someone like Harpreet Singh Bhatia, who plays for Chhattisgarh in the domestic competition? Or do they go for someone like Atharva Taide, who's also both Harpreet and Atharva Taide are left-handers, who's also a youngster, and he was with the team, I think, last season around as well. So who's the first choice player for both of you? I'd probably prefer going with Atharva Taide, and him and Shikhar opening with 1 down, with Rajapaksa at 1 down. I'd want to know what do you guys think?
I think if you open with Taide, it's a bit samey with two left-handers who maybe not that high in intent, and that would be my major concern with that strategy. Look, I have Prab in my starting 11, and I think obviously he's been with the team for a long time. He was from a very young age, and it's, I know someone that we really hoping that would develop as a top player over the coming years. So for me, he's someone I want to give a long opportunity to, someone who plays a high intent. So you have to give them that opportunity to thrive rather than be fearful of his place. And he's come off the back of a really strong domestic tournament, 320 runs, an average of over 50, striking at 142. So that's all you can really ask for of a young player. And we're still, I'd say, you say he's been at the franchise for a while, but he's still only 20 years old. So for me, I would just give him that opportunity to thrive, and I would look to open him probably with Shikhar Dhawan.
Fair enough. Somesh, what's your call?
I mean, I sort of agree here. I was just thinking of their 11, and my 11 was something like Dhawan, Prabsimran, Rajapaksa, Livingston, Jitesh, Shahrukh, Sam Curran, and of course Atharva Taide somewhere in the middle, with Rahul Chahar, Ellis, and Arshdeep to finish, and then Harpreet Brar can be used as an impact player to replace any of the batters.
Okay, so Curran at 7, Ellis at 8, Chahar at 9, Arshdeep at 10.
Curran at 8, in fact, because you have Atharva Taide as well, who's going to be in the top 7. And Curran can essentially be used as a floater, because with Curran and Rajapaksa and Taide, what Punjab can actually do is ensure that there is a left and right hand combination throughout the innings. Because one of the things, specifically a team like Punjab, who do not have so-called spin bashers, would not want is to have the batters with the same hand in the middle. So one thing that they can actually do is just ensure that there is a lefty-righty combination throughout.
Also, it's very peculiar, but Bhanuka Rajapaksa has good numbers versus right arm leg spin, but not so good numbers against left arm spin. It's very peculiar anyway. But
I just think that long boundaries in Australia did him in there. Because a lot of teams bowled to the longer end, and he got sucked into the shots.
Probably. Somesh, with what you mentioned, with Prabsimran opening and then having Atharva Taide somewhere in that batting order so that he can be used as a floater, wouldn't it be better to get someone like a Rishi Dhawan in the 11, and then have Atharva Taide as one of the impact players or a possible impact player along with Harpreet Brar, depending upon the conditions, bring them in? Because I feel with Rishi Dhawan you get some bowling cover as well.
Yeah, but I mean that will depend if they're batting first or bowling first. Because if they're batting first, then Taide starts and Rishi Dhawan and Harpreet Brar are your impact subs. But if they're bowling first, then definitely either of Brar or Rishi Dhawan start, and Taide then becomes your impact player who sort of changes in the mid innings.
Dan, is your 11 also on the similar lines? Because Somesh, I see only one point of contention over there, uh, which is that would you go for Rabada or Ellis? Somesh has gone for Ellis. I tend to lean on the same option. I'd also prefer going for Ellis instead of Rabada because I feel over the last 2 years Rabada's white ball form has taken a major hit, and sometimes he's just too unpredictable. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I rate Ellis super highly, and I think the for those listeners and watchers who aren't aware, he has one of the highest percentages in the world for bowling power play and death overs. So if you add the percentage of his overs in the power play plus add the percentage of his overs in the death, it's around 90%. So he's bowling the tough overs super consistently. He's stepping up when it matters, and from conversations that I've had with people who've worked with him in the past as well, he loves it. He really embraces the high pressure moments, and that's a skill set that I think is pretty rare. Finding room for him in the 11 is tougher unless you go with more domestic batters, because I'm fairly certain that they're gonna. Well, not that anyone's told me, but just I think that they'll go with Rabada, reputational pick, spent more money on him. He was playing last season, etc., etc. And also, I think that it's the only other thing that maybe would be in Ellis's favour is that Trevor Bayliss was his coach in the 100 last year at London Spirit. So he will, and he was superb in that tournament. So there might be kind of that leaning towards Bayliss picking him, but I also worry a little bit about their opening choices in the first few matches. Having an overseas coach, a brand new coach to the group, is not going to be easy in terms of preparation and him understanding the strengths and weaknesses of the domestic players in the group. And as I said earlier, with 4 qualifying from 10, you lose 2 or 3 out of your first 3 games, and you're playing catch up straight away because you're going to need minimum 16 points to qualify. And they can't afford to make bad decisions, bad tactical decisions in terms of strategy and selection in these first few games. I think it's the performance in these first 3-4 games is going to be critical for the success of Punjab moving forward in this tournament.
All right. There's another player that I wanted to discuss. Maybe Dan, you've had looked at his numbers. This player is Vidwat Kaverappa. So this is one player who's had decent numbers in the domestic competition. He took 18 wickets for Karnataka in the recently concluded in the last Syed Mushtaq Ali tournament at an average of at an average of 10.7 and an economy rate of 6.36. Do you guys think that he could be one of those players who just turns around things or takes the tournament by surprise?
From my side, definitely a potential breakout star. Looking at the numbers wise, obviously I haven't seen anything video wise of him, but what I do when someone has these little breakthrough seasons like he had with Karnataka is look at his performances in other formats as well. And in List A cricket, his numbers are similarly impressive. Average of 13, economy of 3.5, and in first class cricket as well, 34 wickets in 10 matches, averaging just over 20 with a really solid economy rate of 2.6 as well. So, look, that for me is a rubber stamp of his quality. Certainly someone that I'm really excited to see. And this is again where I talk about a bit about foreign coach comes in. He may not have a great idea about the strengths of Vidwat Kaverappa before the tournament starts, and sometimes that's a problem. So with the new coach, new captain, it's so important for them to hit the ground running. But yeah, I'm excited to see what this player will bring, and certainly is one to watch.
Fair enough. Somesh, coming to you, which one player do you think is important for them and they can't afford to lose? Because if they lose that player, their balance is gone for a toss.
Well, there is a reason they spent what 18.5 crores on Sam Curran. Uh, Without him, it would be almost impossible to balance this side because Sikandar Raza and Sam Curran are not like for like by any stretch of imagination. So I think with Punjab, it's fairly straightforward that the most important player in their mix is Sam Curran. He solves a lot of issues. I mean, he can be used as a floater. He's a lefty. He has improved massively as a death bowler, but he has the ability to swing the ball as well. So if they actually go with Ellis, him and Arshdeep can be take the new ball, and it's better to have two left arm pacers up front than two right arm pacers. So yeah, for me it's Sam Curran.
I tend to agree. Dan, your thoughts?
It's hard to disagree, isn't it? Really, that Sam Curran is critical as the balancing factor for this team, and I would say that the two English players are really key for them. The extra balance that Luniston brings as well, in terms of one, he's the only batter in the top six probably who's going to be a bowling option, and two, the fact that he's unless they play out time aside, obviously, but this is for me. Chahar were only bowling 4 overs. They've got no other spin options unless they play Raza as well. He's a really critical part of them adopting some form of strategy that isn't really pace heavy. And also, I look at him and I think, if he's not in a team, where are their high intent runs coming from? It's going to take someone like a Shah Khan to have a real transformation from last season, and Jitesh Sharma to continue his upward curve. So there's a bit of expectation, I think, on Livy to score high intent runs, and a lot of them as well.
Somesh, what do you reckon? I mean, someone like Shikhar Dhawan, what kind of a season or what kind of a role do you expect him to take? Because last season, it felt as if, after halfway through the season, he'd started to take more of a role of an anchor rather than an aggressor, what he was for Delhi over the 3 seasons from 2019 to 2021. So, what kind of a season do you now see him take? Because obviously there's no Mayank and Bairstow's ruled out. Do you think that
Mm.
he'll go back to playing an anchor and then accelerating, or do you see
No,
him as an out and out aggressor?
see, I actually don't mind if Shikhar Dhawan plays as an anchor in this team, and I'm not talking about the KL Rahul anchor. I'm talking about the David Warner anchor, which is the more obviously the most difficult type of an anchor one can be. But I think he has the ability and also the team around him. Because if he can bat at around 140, there are others around him who can actually bat at 180, 200, and do not give a lot of damns about their own wicket. And with the impact player rule and Sam Curran, Rabada, Harpreet Brar, they have a very longish batting lineup. So if you can play 45 ball 70, others can put them in a good position to score 185, 190 in almost every game.
Dan, what are your thoughts on this? Like, what kind of a role would you rather prefer Shikhar Dhawan take? Because now he's also the captain.
Yeah, I think that's critical as well. So for me, I think that he's going to. I agree with Somesh largely in terms of the more Warner-esque anchor type of player, if that makes sense, rather than the strike rates don't matter anchor player. But yeah, it's. I think that him, if he can regularly score, say 45 ball 70s, as Somesh said, that would be really positive for the team. I'm a little bit concerned. I think that his strike rate and intent levels have gone down a little bit in the last year or two. I think we've seen that a little bit in other formats as well. And I think that if Shikhar Dhawan, say, was average 30 at a strike rate of 140 this season, that would be an extremely successful season for him. And it's important to realise as well. I just brought up his numbers in the tournament over his career. Only once in 2020 has he ended the season with a strike rate of over 140, and only in 2018 and 2019 has he ended up with a strike rate of over 130. So it's a lot to ask of him to strike at 140 for this comp, with the extra leadership burden as captain as well. So maybe it's something, instead of being a 41-30 type player, maybe it's 31-40 type player, it's a 41-30 type player. That type of thing. But yeah, certainly his strike rate last 2 seasons have been under 125 as well. So anything over 130, I think, would be an improvement for him.
Yeah, coming to the 2021, I think last season he was also not sure and he was struggling a bit. But I think in 2021 his strike rate came down because of the shift to pitches in UAE. He was doing quite well in the India leg. But having said that, we've discussed quite in detail about the options that Punjab have and what permutations and combinations they can look at. Do you think this team can reach the top 4? Because amongst all the teams that are there, or amongst the 8 franchises that have been there, this team has reached the playoffs only twice, once in 2008 and then in 2014. It's almost going to be almost 10 seasons or 9 seasons since they've reached the playoffs. Are they going to break that drought this year, or it looks difficult? To me it looks difficult, but I still want to know what both of you think.
I'll go first. If I don't mind. I look at them and I think, it's a possible. I think some things will have to go right for them for that to happen. A few sort of high variance moments might have to go for them, which didn't happen last season. For example, the 2 Tawatia sixes after the Odean Smith overthrow, for example, that was a high variance moment that went against them. And yes, they haven't qualified a lot recently. However, I think quite a few times over the last few years, they've been 1 win away from qualifying, and that was again the case last year as well. And so they're not a million miles away. My concern is Bairstow being out and how they structure up differently without him, and the fact that they've got a new coach who, for me, the jury's out on how he will perform as an IPL coach here. So those are massive question marks. And as I said earlier, I've been consistent on this. For me, they've got to make good decisions early in the tournament. They have to hit the ground running. It's no good being one from 4 and then working out what your best combination is, because that's super tough to qualify after that. It's possible. I look at them as one of probably 4 or 5 teams that can come anywhere between 3rd and 8th, if you like. That's possible, but certainly not a given that they're going to be challenging at the top.
For me, it looks difficult for them. The one good thing about this tournament is that almost all teams have a chance to qualify. It's not very straightforward, and sometimes the difference is just of 1 win here and there. But with Punjab, I feel there are a lot of question marks. We've already discussed Dhawan's batting ability in detail. His numbers have been on the downward spiral lately. Plus, Rajapaksa's form is something that we've discussed. Shah Rukh Khan we did not even touch upon, but he had a horror season last time around. Atharva Taide and Prabsimran Singh would be there essentially in their first good season. Jitesh has had just 1 good season. So bowling-wise, I feel Punjab are sorted, but I have a lot of doubts over their batting. And this is the reason I feel that they are not in my favorites to be in the top 4.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what both of you have said here. I just think they need a lot of things to work out their way, because the kind of player that Livingstone is himself, he did deliver an average of 30 plus last season, around 320 330 runs with a strike rate of 180. But when you are a player like Livingstone, where you are going to play high risk cricket, the chances of you not being able to score 200 runs is also possible. I mean, Livingston can very well have the kind of season that Glenn Maxwell had in 2020, and I think something similar can be said of even Jitesh and Shahrukh. So I think while they do have high intent batters, what they are clearly lacking is someone who can still control the innings in some way or the other. And ideally, if you want that player, you want that player to be to be someone other than Shikhar Dhawan, because like Somesh mentioned, Shikhar Dhawan hasn't had the best of times either. 2022 in ODI cricket, he had a strike rate of 71. So he was struggling. It's not just that he was, batting with him himself because the team was struggling. It was also down to him also not getting the best kind of rhythm, and he's not getting younger. He's 36. So at that age, your reflexes do tend to get slower. I just feel that there are a lot of question marks, and a lot of things will have to come together for them. You need Arshdeep to have a very good season. If Rabada doesn't play and Ellis does, Ellis needs to have a good season. A lot rides on Sam Curran's shoulder. If there are individual performances, then this team might go through. But as a team, I just think a lot of pieces in the puzzle are still missing, and they don't have enough backups. They don't have an eighth overseas player, and they have a squad of 22 instead of 25. So if there are injuries, God may help them.
Or they would need a luck like Gujarat.
Yeah, you, that, and you can't plan for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we feel now move on from a team which is sometimes called as Bangalore Light to Team Bangalore, and it's because Punjab have had a lot of similarities like Bangalore over the seasons in the Indian T20 League. Coming to Bangalore, they've been the only team to make it to the playoffs of the last three seasons, 2019, 2020, and 2022, 2021, and 2020. So they've made it to the playoffs all three times, and I think it's maybe one of the first for Bangalore. Uh, and they now resort to being a team that doesn't act on impulses as what they used to do before that. uh, First thoughts on Bangalore, Somesh.
I'll take Dan. Take this one.
Thanks, Somesh. Yeah, look, they have qualified in consistently, as you say, Gurkirat. However, the last 2 years, I think they've actually qualified with a negative net boundary percentage on both seasons, which is actually probably a mark of a bit of luck and some fine margins coming their way. Certainly, that's very unusual, and I would debate whether that was a sustainable strategy or dynamic going forward. I look at them now as a rather differently structured team to Punjab. Maybe, as you say, in the past that was quite true, but I think that certainly last season Punjab were looking to structure up much more high intent than this Bangalore team, who I think could, if Maxwell doesn't perform well and or is a bit rusty after his injury, you're wondering where the high intent innings are going to come from. Really, it looks a little bit very one dimensional and pedestrian a bit at the top, unless Faf du Plessis carries on his high intent that we saw in South Africa and a bit over the winter generally. But how much of that was forced? Because Reza Hendricks, who was his opening partner in South Africa, was striking about 80 for the whole tournament. It was consistently chewing up a ton of balls. So he kind of maybe had no option but to do that. For me, there's question marks. We now understand that Rajat Patidar is also going to be absent for at least the first half of the tournament. I think maybe does Hasaranga miss some games as well? And if so, that's a big problem because there's no one who is like for like to replace him at all, and no one, not only like for like, but anywhere close to the same quality as him. So these are problems that they're going to have to overcome, and a bit like Punjab that we just discussed. I do feel that they're going to have to start the season well if they're going to have a chance of coming top four again.
Okay.
I think Rajat
So
Paidar has joined the team. Not sure if he'd be fit to play because he's joined the team. Bangalore posted about him joining the team.
yeah, but he's most likely out for more than half of the season. Now I'm just looking. I'm still wondering how did they make it to the top four last season, because this team had the lowest boundaries per innings record against pace, and we are talking of a side who has a lot of players who struggle against spin. We know Virat Kohli would rather face pace against over spin. So will Faf du Plessis. So would
So,
Dinesh Karthik.
so would Dinesh Karthik.
And still this team had the lowest ball boundary per innings against pace. No marks for guessing that they had one of the lowest boundary percentage against spin as well. They experiment with Shehbaz Ahmed somewhere in the middle order, but his numbers against pace were cheese as compared to his numbers against spin. They were chalk. So I don't think in the auction they have done enough to counter that. So again, like Dan said, I don't know where the high intent innings is going to come from. A couple of clutch knocks from Rajat Patidar towards the very end helped them actually qualify. They were down, they were out. Even Rajat Patidar was not the part of their squad. They got lucky because Lavneet Sosodia got injured and Rajat Patidar was included as a last-minute injury replacement. But now he's not there. Maxwell has made a statement a couple of days ago that it will take months for him to be 100% fit. So there are question marks about, will he be able to sustain the pressure of 14 straight games? So, like with Punjab, I'm not sure where the runs against spin are going to come from, and the way in which Faf and Virat batted last season, if they continue to bat that way, I'm not sure where the runs against pace are going to come from. So essentially, where are the runs going to come from?
Okay, I do feel that why they probably did not look to tamper with the opening batting or the top three is because of Faf's numbers against spin. Because when we were discussing about Bangalore last time around, we did talk about how Faf and Kohli opening together, or even Kohli coming down at three and them batting together isn't ideal because both of them could be choked with away going spin, which is left arm spin or leg spin. But if we look at Faf's numbers post the IPL, we look at the CPL or the other competitions, he's actually really done well. I think he's averaging over 40 and a strike rate of 145, 140 plus against spin and against left arm spin in the CPL, or probably till the end of 2022 he was averaging 86 with a strike rate of some 180 170 180 plus. So he's actually doing much better against spin than what many had thought, and he had a very good 100 in the SA20 as well. So I think what is going to come down to is that they'll have, maybe Faf might be given the role of attacking spin. Virat will probably be given the role of staying till the end. And Virat has become better, I think, since the last tournament. I don't think that both Virat and Siraj will have the kind of poor tournaments that they had last time. Siraj's tournament was a very peculiar one. Again, he conceded probably the more than 36s, which I think is at least the second highest or highest, might have been second highest because I think Hasranga was also hit for a lot of sixes. But at the same time, Siraj had a dot ball percentage of 40%. So I think Siraj will have a very good season because of how he's been bowling in one days as well. I expect him to probably carry that bowling lineup. And yeah, I'm not so sure if Dinesh Karthik can replicate what he did in the last season. And again, I'm not really sure who are they going to who's the Indian batter that they're going to play or start off with. Will it be Anuj Rawat, or will it be someone like Mahipal Lomror? I'm not so sure because I don't think that Anuj Rawat should be in the first 11. It should be Mahipal Lomror for me. But yeah, Mahipal Lomror also hasn't been able to set the stage on fire in the tournament. So there are some few gaping holes. But yeah, I do expect Siraj and Kohli to perform better than what they did last time.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, sort of carrying forward what Gurkirat said, that definitely Virat is in a better form than what he was this time around last year. So that is a big plus for them. There is no chance someone can have as bad a season as Siraj had twice in a row. His numbers in power play were poor, and that reflected on Bangalore's overall numbers. His numbers at the death were even worse. So definitely, it won't be as bad as this. But looking at it from the auction lens, Dan, do you think they did enough to resolve the gaps that they had last season?
No, not really. No, that's a big issue for me. We talk about you talked about Kohli and Siraj being very likely to have better seasons, but I think you could also make the reverse argument for Dinesh Karthik, who certainly performed so far above expectation last season that it would be a real shock if he didn't mean revert this season to more of a normal level, if that makes sense. So there's a counter argument, I think, to that. With regards to the auction, look, now Patadar is injured as well. Is there going to be a case where they're going to have to play Lomraw and another domestic batter, Anuj Rawat or Suyash Pravidesai, someone like that? And I look at them and I think they're quite limited in terms of their attacking intent. And I mean, I was really surprised actually in 2022 at the auction how much they paid for Anuj Rawat. I didn't see him going for the money that he did at all. And I just think that they're all quite similar, pedestrian, one-dimensional players who we talk about where's the highest strike rate innings going to come from, and I don't really see it. So look, let's. For me, though, I would have looked to pick up maybe a high intent local batter. Would have been really on my shopping list. At least one, if not two. And they've got a few pace options from the domestic market. Akash Deep or Siddharth Kaul or Rajan Kumar, who's started really strong for Uttarakhand as well in lower level tournaments. So they've got some pace backup, but I just don't really see the high intent batting backup. That for me is a bit of a red flag for this team. And also the other thing is, how do they replace Josh Hazlewood, who looks like he's going to miss the start of the tournament as well, and Hasaranga? So no like for like the Hasaranga, like I said before, both in terms of skill set and quality. Hazlewood, that looks like Topley or David Willey. I think Topley is the better bowler, but Willey adds more, obviously, with the bat. It helps with the batting depth as well. And a left-hander who can bat higher up the order and try and create some left-right combos if the situation dictated. So certainly a lot of question marks for me regarding what lineup they're going to field for these first few games of the season, and I think that the auction strategy probably didn't help them with that.
Yep. With regards to Hasaranga not playing a few games, I do feel that they would want Bracewell in the 11 so that maybe he can bat at 3 or 4. I mean, him or Maxwell can bat at 3 or 4 and actually plug that gap for the interim, and it'll give them an opportunity to bleed in Himanshu Sharma, who's a leg spinner on the bench. He might be useful later on in the season. One of the things that Bangalore were very high up on was something that they've started called hinterland scouting. They have quite a few players in their 11 who are unknowns. Avinash Singh from JNK, relatively unknown. He's again a backup pacer who might come into the team at some point of time. But looking at how their auction went, and now with Will Jacks and Rajat Patidar ruled out, their products from hinterland scouting will have to develop very quickly because they are really going to need them this season.
And the question is whether that's either one, possible, or two, what the likelihood is of that even happening, if it is possible, because this is a huge step up from any domestic tournament. So to find someone, as you say, in the hinterland or something where there's just out of the blue almost is pretty crazy. And they tried this in the women's tournament as well. I think they were trying to find the domestic pacer who bowled over 130 kph. That's like me holding trials in Birmingham ahead of the 100 and saying, I'll only apply if you're a men's pacer who can bowl over 160. That's just crazy. It's not going to happen. So, yeah, I think that they're a little bit ambitious with regards to finding this untapped talent. Maybe it's more of a I don't know, maybe I'm a bit of a cynic, but a social media little plus as well kind of thing. I would be skeptical that anyone can come out of nothing and achieve a great deal in the IPL, at least in the short term.
See, apart from Avinash Singh, which Somesh mentioned, there's also this player. There are actually two players. One is a left-arm pacer from Uttarakhand, whose name is Rajan Kumar. He took 10 wickets at an average of 15.9 and economy rate of 5.88. And then there is Manoj Bhandagi. I hope I've got the name's pronunciation wrong. Who's also a high intent batter and can couple up as an all rounder. Any chance for any of these guys to get in the initial games, or would they be used as impact players, or maybe who knows, they might be investments for the future. I'm not so sure if Avinash Singh would get games this season because he's not played any professional cricket at all. I the way I see it, I think someone like Avinash Singh would be probably a net bowler, wherein the coaches will just look at his development through the nets and then maybe take a call if he's one player that they want to retain for the future seasons.
Yeah, so I name checked both of them as potential impact players in my Substack that I wrote about for Bangalore. Bandaje, is that how you pronounce it? I think left-hander, probably the domestic batter with more intent than most. I'd be surprised though if his bowling was up to standard at this level. I think that could be a bit of a weakness if you're looking to get a lot of overs out of him. And as you say, Rajan Kumar, we spoke about already. He's someone who's got some good numbers in the early stages of his career. But I mean, even then, it's still a lot to ask someone. We spoke about Kaverappa already at Punjab, who's also got good numbers. So, there's a few players who certainly you want to keep an eye on, but whether they're going to be able to make an immediate impact in this first season is certainly up for debate, I think.
And not to forget, I mean, we're talking about Rajan Kumar, who's nearly 27 years old. He's played 5 list A games and 7 T20s. So it's not like he's a young find, right? If someone has played only a handful of games at a professional level by 27, there has to be some history behind that. So maybe, of course, the scouts from Bangalore would know better than us. Moving on, Dan. I mean, assuming everyone is available, what is your best Bangalore 11?
That's so difficult. Are we talking about with Hasaranga, without Hasaranga, with
Hazel, everyone's there?
Hazel?
Let's assume everyone is there.
Okay, so like regardless of toss, I went with something like Duplessis, Kohli, Patidar, Maxwell, Lomraw, Karthik, Shabazz Ahmed, Hasaranga, Harshal Patel, Hazelwood, and Siraj as an 11. But that 11 will probably never play together as the tournament progresses. With regards to the impact player, I quite like the idea of Bandaje getting that high impact, high intent opportunity if the situation dictates. But then you can also look at power play specialists like Akash Deep or something like that with a ball, or you can look at collapse averters like a Prabhadesai or something like that as well. So there's a few options about how they're going to structure up with this impact player, and I'm not sure that they've got such good options as impact players as some of the other teams, but let's see.
And who replaces Patidar? Because it's highly likely that he won't be available for at least half the season.
Yeah, so you're looking at Prabhadesai or Rawat or something to come in for him, most likely, I would have thought. Unless they structure up differently and because Hazelwood's injured, they play Dave Willey and that adds more to the batting or something like that as well.
I feel a lot of Bangalore's success, or maybe not a lot, but some success of Bangalore over the last two season has centered around Harshal Patel. But what we have seen is that post the tournament last season, when Harshal Patel has played for India, his numbers have not looked great. I think his T20I career economy is over 9, and he's really going for a lot of runs at the death. I think around 12. I think in 12 innings out of his 29, he's probably gone for more than 40 runs. Uh, with Bangalore playing again half of their games in Chinnaswamy, which is more or less a graveyard for bowlers. What kind of role do you see him? Do you see him take? And do you guys think he'll be able to do well, or do you guys think that this season could be a really difficult for him, given how he's not had the success at the international level, and the pitch in Chinnaswamy really doesn't offer a lot of grip. What kind of a season do you see unfolding for Harshal Patel?
From my perspective, I look at the variable level that he's had across the last couple of seasons. And I think, was it 2021 he got the purple cap? I think it was, wasn't it?
It was 2021 when he got the purple cap and the hat trick. He also got the hat trick.
And yeah, that's right. And a lot of those wickets, when you look at them more again, they're kind of what you might call cheap wickets. The players down the order, finishing off tails at the death, stuff like that. And I think that kind of mean reverted a little bit last season. I look at him as definitely a top 10 domestic bowler, top 10 domestic pacer, I should say, which probably looks at maybe you're looking at getting 20 wickets. And the Chinnaswamy is a home venue, 20 wickets, bowling at the death. Anything under 9s is probably a decent return in terms of economy as well. So 20 wickets at under 9s would be a good season for him. I don't see him getting the amount of wickets he got in 2021 though.
Somesh?
Yeah, I mean, looking from the India lens, Harshal Patel, I mean, I'd want Harshal Patel to do better. It's one of those cases where a team would need him in the away games a lot more than in home games. So he's going to be their away bowling specialist, unless they're playing Kolkata.
Fair enough, because I suspect that he might pick wickets, but he may go for runs, because what I see might happen is what happened a little bit in the 2021 season, especially in the India leg, where Siraj was bowling very well. He had a very good economy rate, but he wasn't getting wickets because teams were looking to play him out, and then they were attacking other bowlers. And in that respect, someone like Harshal Patel got a few wickets. So before I, before I go on to ask you guys that are they potential top 4 contenders or not this time, they already have a lot of players who are with injury concerns and might miss a few games. But still, who's that one player who they will rely a lot on in that season? Like, if that player is not available, their season could really go off the rail of the track.
Yeah, maybe I can start here. For me, it has to be Dinesh Karthik, because I mean, I don't know. He was the problem solver for them last season, and without a similar kind of a return from him this season, I really see them struggling big time. So I think for me, from a Bangalore perspective, almost everyone is replaceable except Dinesh Karthik at the moment.
Yeah, I do feel that Dinesh Karthik is probably going to have a 300 runs kind of a season instead of a 500 kind of a run, 500 runs kind of a season. Dan, who do you think is the most important player for them?
I went down a slightly different road for this. Whilst I do agree, obviously when we've spoken about Dinesh Karthik having an unbelievable season last season, which is going to be very tricky to replicate this year, I went with Glenn Maxwell, because obviously we've got the injury doubts on him. He hasn't played a great deal since he broke his leg. And look, he, one, provides high intent runs, high strike rate runs, and in this pedestrian lineup, I do wonder where that's going to come from if it's not coming from him. Specifically, now they've lost Will Jacks as his replacement, and while they've also got Michael Bracewell, I look at him more as a not a top order batter, more of a lower order hitter, as opposed to banging say number 3 or number 4. And also, obviously, with that matchup spin that he provides against left-hander heavy teams as well. So, if Glenn Maxwell wasn't fit or wasn't playing well, that for me is a huge problem for Bangalore moving forward this year.
There's one more name that comes quite close, and that is actually Vanindu Hasaranga, because Bangalore last season had the best balls per wicket record when it comes to spin bowling as a unit, and Hasaranga had a huge role to play. And if he's not there, even among the overseas option, only player who's not actually in the league right now is maybe Mujib, but it's not like for like.
No.
Yeah. So quite a few players who are irreplaceable in what is turning out to be injury Premier League, so to speak. Yeah.
Also, one more question for both of you: is there any chance that Finn Allen gets a game? Because Faf du Plessis is such a lock that most of the people have not even fathomed or taken into account that there's an aggressive, high intent player, someone like Finn Allen, who was also a part of Bangalore squad last season. Is there any chance that Finn Allen gets a game at some point of time? Maybe Finn Allen opens with Virat and Faf comes down to number 3 if there are batting issues which are not being sorted. Is there that possibility?
Only if Avinash Singh turns out to be the next Jasprit Bumrah, so that they might not need a overseas bowler and then can replace a batter with Finn Allen.
For me, I think if he doesn't play early in the tournament, it's difficult to see him getting game time, because obviously they've got Hazelwood, Hasaranga out early in the tournament, so they might structure up differently with some domestic bowlers as opposed to overseas bowlers, creating that opportunity for them to go a bit heavier with their overseas batters. I rate Finn Allen extremely highly. I recruited him for my Birmingham team in the 2020 100, and there's not many batters like him in world cricket. Super high intent, will go from ball 1, hasn't got fear, hits it so hard. I mean, the coaches that I know who have spent a lot of time in the nets with him say that they've never seen a batter hit it as hard as him. So, look, he's got a lot of talent, but it's just a real shame that he's kind of a bit blocked, really, with the overseas combos here at Bangalore. And I do think that if he was another franchise, he might get more game time.
Are they potential top 4 team for you guys?
From my perspective, I look at him. Look at Bangalore, I should say, as similar to what I said to Punjab. Anything between 3rd and 8th, you wouldn't be shocked. For me, again, as I said with Punjab as well, a lot of things are going to have to go right. They're going to have to somehow win some early games when they've got a lot of players out. They're going to have to start the tournament in a really positive manner. And that's not a given. I worry about the pedestrian nature of their batting. I worry about how they're going to bowl quality spin if Hasaranga's not available. Maxwell's fitness is a doubt. And these are, I think, really viable concerns over this group. We also have to rationalise, like I said earlier, about the fact that they've qualified 2 years in a row, I think, with negative net boundary percentages. 3 years in a row with a negative boundary percentage would be unheard of. So they're going to have to step up in those sort of underlying metrics. And I think that's going to be tough. I look at it maybe 35, 65, something like that to qualify. It's 35% yes, 65% no, something like that.
Fair enough. For me, they were probably the 4th team to qualify, because their first 11 that you talked about, or when everyone's available, I think it has most bases covered. But given the number of injury concerns and availability concerns that they have, how they manage through for the first 4 games or 5 games till the time maybe Hasranga is not available, Paridar is not available. I think that's going to be key, because the 11 that you talked about, where Kohli and Faf are opening, Paridar at 3, Maxwell at 4, Lomror at 5, or maybe you can have Suyesh Prabhudesai, DK at 6, Shahbaz at 7, then Harshal, Siraj, Hazelwood, and Hasranga to follow. Maybe Hasranga, plays at number 7, or is promoted on one of the few occasions to do sort of pinch hitting. I think that 11 is good enough to make it to the top 4. But again, if they don't have those players, how are they going to manage that is going to be difficult. But now we'll move
Hey,
on to.
can they send Harshal at 3 just to throw the cat among the pigeons?
Yeah, I don't think that is happening. In the absence of Patdar, I think they might as well play Mahipal Lomrol at 3 with Prabhu Desai at 5. I think that is, or maybe Manoj Bandage. I think that is more probable than them sending Harshal at 3. I don't think that's going to happen. Anyway, moving on to our segment where we take questions from the people who are watching this. Uh, the first question that has come in is from Our Earth is Best. What do you reckon? Victorian match shot will be a gun for Punjab?
I kind of think we've already covered this to some extent, where we talked about the step up from the Big Bash, and in particular the higher quality spin and the conditions being a little bit different here to Australia as well. So I think that there's points to prove there. Obviously, he's coming off of a superb Big Bash though, so he's coming into tournament in great form. I'm not so sure he's going to play that much, to be honest with you, but I could be wrong.
Fair enough. Next question is by Shivam Sharma. He's probably a Punjab fan. He asked that thoughts about Baltej Singh as an impact player.
For me, absolutely, a really positive option for Punjab in certain circumstances. With the ball, he's gonna be likely to be a power play specialist, I think, if they were to use him correctly, and taking an absolute bucket load of wickets in the winter. Someone who I really think is going to improve and carry on making an impact in cricket, and I think that he's probably quite well equipped to be a strong power play bowler at this level. So, yeah, in the right circumstances, absolutely.
This one's not a comment, but more of a compliment. Sanjeev KR says, Dan, thanks for picking Arshdeep at Kent.
Yeah, really excited about having Arshdeep at Kent. We got him for 5 red ball matches after the tournament, and super excited because while he hasn't played a lot in red ball cricket, he's done well when he has played. He looks to be a bowler who's very, very capable of hitting good areas on a consistent basis, and hopefully we can help assist his development, giving him this game time. We're in Division 1, by the way, in County Cricket, which is the highest division. So it's going to be bowling against high-quality batters, high-quality opposition. It's going to be great for his development, hopefully, as well. And hopefully, Kent can propel him and develop his career so that he could look to push towards test inclusion for India moving forward.
Next question is by ACB. He's asking, hey Dan, what should be your impact player strategy for RCB? Should they go for an extra batter or bowler?
Well, I think to start with, it's dependent on whether they bat first or they bowl first. Look, I think I said earlier, I'm not so sure that they've got the best impact player options compared to others. But let's see. Bandage could be a good option if they want to increase their batting intent or increase their batting depth if they're batting first. And then they've got a few bowling options, to say Rajan Kumar, Akashdeep, Siddharth Kaul, who could come in if they want to go more bowling heavy. Spin options would be tough to find, and obviously they've only got 2 sub spinners who are both leggies. Khan Sharma, who's the veteran, and Himanshu Sharma, who's a lot more unproven at this level. So it's tough to know really what they're going to do if, say, like they go to a venue and they find it really spin heavy in the first innings, and they want to bowl a lot of spin innings too. They might not have the quality on the bench to be able to exploit the conditions. So I think it's very nuanced. I think it's going to be very situationally dependent. Whether they've got those options covered in the domestic bench players, I'm not quite sure.
Next question is by Neural Hacks with Vasant. He's asking Bracewell for Will Jacks. How do you see that move?
Yeah, look, finding replacement players is really difficult because there's all sorts of ifs, buts, and maybes about trying to find these players. From they've got to be in the original auction list. 2, they've got to have a reserve price below the value that you've picked a player at, stuff like that. So there's it's quite tricky to find, 1, a good player as a replacement player, and 2, someone who's can fit the skill set gaps that you've got. I really rate Will Jacks. He's someone that I've been following for a long time in English domestic cricket. I recruited him in the T10 several winters ago, and someone who just super high intent, super positive batter. I would say probably if there was one negative about him, you say that maybe he's vulnerable against quality spin early in his innings, but that's certainly not a unique issue for anybody, really. I look at him though as more of a top order batter, like a top 3, whereas I look at Michael Bracewell as more of like a number 6 or number 7 even. So there's certainly differences in terms of their role. I think it would be really lazy to say they're both batters who bowl off spin, because I think their roles and their skill sets are really quite different in that respect. However, then there could go back to what I was saying about the auction, the player pool in the auction, who you've got to choose from as a replacement. There might not have been anyone who had exactly the same skill set and role as Will Jacks, so they decided to get someone who's like broadly similar, and I can understand that. Again, with Bracewell though, how do you stepping up to this level would be the question. Obviously, playing in New Zealand, you do tend to get a lot of small venues, I should say. And yes, whilst you might get that here at Chinnaswamy to some degree, it's a higher standard and generally bigger venues as well. So let's see. For me, the jury would be out for him at the top level.
One last question before we wrap up this show. This question is by Krishna Singh. He's asking thoughts on Topley's death bowling.
I think it's improving. I think that he's certainly now gone from being what I would call like a 2-1-1 bowler, 2 power play, 1 middle, 1 death, to be like a 2-2 bowler with 2 power play, 2 death. I would be fine with him. Certainly in English cricket, that would be primarily the case. I would think. For me, the main issue with Reece is not necessarily his quality, but consistently that he's struggled to play more than about 70% of matches in a season for his teams. So he's obviously had a lot of back problems in the past, and I think playing 14 games, game in, game out, might be a struggle for him. So they might look to rotate him with Dave Willey, who obviously produces a left arm pace option as well. So that could be something that Bangalore are considering.
Yep. Two questions from me before we finish up. Who is more injury prone, Reece Topley or Jason Behrendorff? And 2, what is the probability of Jason Behrendorff, who is released by Bangalore to MI, actually picking a fifer when Bangalore play Mumbai?
So in terms of the injury proneness, I mean, yeah, they're both obviously very injury prone. Look, the Bangalore Mumbai trade of Bangalore is a strange one, because I remember when it was announced to start with, it was like I'd never seen anything quite like it actually on social media, and it was almost like that they'd picked up like this hybrid of Lasith Malinga and Jasprit Bumrah all rolled into one. Like, it was incredible, and I was thinking, yeah, he's good, but not that good. And so, but then let's see. It would be certainly a 5-4 against Bangalore would be quite amusing.
Fair enough. I think on that note, we've discussed quite in detail about 2 more teams, which are Bangalore and Bangalore Light, as some fans would call it. I'm not so sure it's a great name to have. hoping that Punjab franchise has a different identity of its own by the end of this tournament. And Punjab fans have something to cheer about, because it's been 8 seasons that they've not made it to the playoffs, and they've been consistent at finishing number sixth or number fifth. Maybe that extra effort this time propels them to a top four finish, because we all of us do want some uncertainty and something new in every edition of the Indian T20 League. Hopefully this season does provide us with that, and there is no shortage of any excitement or drama. On that note, we'll be ending this show. So we've now covered 4 teams out of 10. We covered Hyderabad and Rajasthan in the last episode, and Bangalore and Punjab today. If you're a fan of those 4 teams, please do check out these 2 episodes rather, and stay tuned for your favorite teams analysis coming up very soon. Like I said last time around, we are still waiting on few confirmations, replacement confirmations for a few players, because this is now started to become injured Premier League more than anything else. Hopefully, once the tournament starts, there are no more injuries, there are no more unavailability issues for players, and all we that can talk about is just cricket, and pure cricket, and some very exciting cricket. Thank you so much for watching this show. We'll be back
And
again soon. Yeah,
yeah,
Somesh,
not to forget, just wait for an hour and we have the final of the women's T20 tournament as well, and you can watch it with us live in an hour's time.
Yeah, at 7:30 we go live while doing the watch along of the final of the Women's T20 League. There's Mumbai and there's Delhi. Delhi qualified for the final straight away. Mumbai actually had a little bit of a stutter by and beat UP in the eliminator. It's also going to be a cracker of a game, probably a day of history in women's cricket in India. Who knows? Maybe it is, and maybe it is that day wherein it inspires a lot more women cricketers, not only in India but across the world, to pick up their bats and pick up their balls and start playing the sport that they love with utmost passion once again. Thank you so much for watching this show. There's a lot more content as always coming up on cricket.com. Stay tuned for that. Thank you.